see this or didn't hear it by other means, the Emporia plant is reopening. Everybody knows what I'm going to say. In case you don't, let me just say, to make Hostess cupcakes and Twinkies again. Not to forget the ding-dongs and ho-hos too. That is good news for us. There was another story in this same paper that I consider very good news. And I want to tell you about a group of caring people led by our very own Jason Lamprecht. You know, when one of our own makes the news, we have to celebrate. In case you didn't hear about it, there was a mama duck and her ducklings who got stuck in Topeka this week, trying to navigate all of those busy streets. What a terror for the ducklings. You know, it was that children's book, Make Way for Ducklings, all over again. If you haven't read it, you need to read that book. Now, I don't know for sure how well, oh, by the way, should I quote Jason? Of course. Did any of you miss this article? Now, Jason, I already told you I was going to do this. So this is fair warning to all of you that if you make the paper, we're going to share it in community. In community, right? In community. And I quote, I noticed they couldn't get up and push the button to turn on the stop sign. So everybody would stop and let them cross. ... I can't say I've ever taken leave to chase a duck. If you want another copy, you can. Now, I'm not sure how well the Twinkies story will fit in the sermon today, but I would invite you to see how the other one goes. It would really be difficult to overestimate the importance of this scripture passage that we have heard today in Christian thought. I don't mean just today. I mean throughout all time. The love command that Jesus gives to the disciples is understood as both the center of Jesus' teaching and the center of Christian life. Our Christian ethics are commonly described as a love ethic, in large because of this very passage of Scripture. This conversation that Jesus had with the disciples is one of the last ones he had with them before his death and resurrection. It's his last opportunity to say what he wants to say. And Jesus has decided to get right to the point. He puts aside all of his usual way of speaking in parables and stories and paradox, and he simply decides to give a command, an order, if you will. He says so simply, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. That's it. Some people would sit down right now. I could, but I'm not going to. Because there's more for us to think about with this. One New Testament scholar said this: this new command is simple enough for a toddler to memorize and appreciate. And it is profound enough that the most mature believers are repeatedly embarrassed at how poorly they comprehend it and put it into practice. How embarrassing it is for us who call ourselves Christian to recall that Jesus wanted to make it easy for us by having us just focus on one thing. And yet we have found so many other ways to identify ourselves as true believers. And oftentimes we have difficulty or a hard time putting this commandment into practice, even in our own families. You know, Jesus doesn't talk about the importance of the Bible or how it is interpreted. Of course, the New Testament would not even be written until 2 generations after Jesus' death. And Jesus doesn't talk about the importance of a carefully constructed creed. The Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed would be hammered out by debating theologians over the next 350 years. The Bible and those creeds have become terribly important to us and to most human beings over all the years. And yet the one most important thing that Jesus would want us to know has somehow been lost as we have wrestled with the right way to say things, or the power to do so, or the proper relations. What Jesus wanted us to know, apparently, was although people might fight or have wars or leave churches over who held correct beliefs, this was not Jesus' primary concern. Jesus talks with the disciples and with us in a way that every person may understand. He addresses us in a way that we all have in common. Little children, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. He says to adults, little children, this is a special moment. His words convey an intimacy between Jesus and all people, all who are children of God. Little children, all of you, this commandment is not about what you believe. It's about how you live. In her autobiographical work, The Spiral Staircase, Karen Armstrong writes that in most religious traditions, faith is not about belief, but about practice. She writes, religion is not about having to believe or accept certain difficult propositions. Instead, religion is about doing things that change you. This came to her especially when she wrote her first book on Islam. She came to understand that Muslims are not expected to accept a complex creed. Instead, they are required to perform certain ritual actions, such as their pilgrimage to Mecca, their fasting, for which is the purpose of changing them. Muslims stop what they are doing and in prayer face toward Mecca several times a day as an act of surrender. And the Muslims are commanded to give their alms, or we would say money, to the poorer and the more vulnerable among them, as a way of cultivating a kind of generous spirit that makes them want to give graciously as God does. The author says that these repeated actions are intended to lead to personal transformation. She writes, the point is that this was not a belief system, but a process. The religious life made people act in ways that were supposed to change them forever. Of course, our Christian religion has its own share of our practices and rituals that shape our lives in the image of Christ. And many of them are so dear to us and shape us and form us into who we are. Sometimes we get a little sidetracked when we get concerned about who's orthodox and who's revisionist and who's this and who's that, when perhaps the more important concern is who most effectively actually shows the love of Christ in their lives. After all, Jesus did not say, "They will know you are my disciples if you believe in the right things." What Jesus did say is, "Little children, love each other. That's how everyone will know that you're my disciple." So how will everyone know? There is a story in Denison's book, Out of Africa, about a boy named Kitao. He appeared at the author's door one day to ask for a job as a domestic servant. She hired him in a moment. She was surprised that after 3 months together, he asked her for a letter of recommendation to Sheikh Ali bin Salim, a Muslim who lived in a nearby town. She didn't want to lose him. She offered to pay him more, to keep him, to offer him more courtesies. But money was not his interest. Kitao had decided that he was going to either become a Christian or a Muslim. And his purpose in working for her had been to see up close and personal the way a Christian lived. And now that he had worked for her for a few months, he wanted to go and see how Muslims lived and behaved. And then he would decide. The author writes, remembering that she wished that Kitao had told her that before he came to live with her. Wouldn't we? What would it be like if someone came to live with us to see how Christians live? What would it be like if someone comes to our church to see how Christians behave? I hope they do. We have the opportunity every day to live our faith, to love one another as Jesus loved us. That's what it means to be a disciple. So what does that look like for you and for us? You will decide that for yourself in your own home and your work and your school and at play. And we decide together here as the community of faith in our worship, in our study, in our service. We claim and affirm our mission to extend the love of Christ to all people. In Jesus' day, the living of this new command is a public sign of the faith community. It's like wearing a t-shirt that says, "I am a disciple." The love command is both the organizing force and the sign of Jesus in the community. It's a decision to live in covenant together as disciples. The new command that Jesus gives to love is not new in the sense that a command to love had never been given before. Rather, it is new in the sense that a new community emerges in its giving. We become new as we love. And in that context of covenant, the command to love one another is a command to love one another in community. And that's us. That's the church. We as the church receive the command to love all. And our love does not limit itself. It does not limit itself according to the social profile of a person. Why, it might even reach out to a duck. Our love knows no limits. And we are continually creating our covenant to live as disciples right here in Silver Lake. Let's remember that love is an action verb. Some of us will be carrying rakes and hoes and shovels this afternoon. As we talked last week, when Jesus calls us to love, it means to do something. And that love has so many expressions. Not just cleaning up a park. It's the love that we share with one another in our worship, when we offer our prayers and cares and songs together. It's the love that we share when we spend time in study together and affirm the importance of our spiritual formation and growth. The love that we have in covenant together means that we share in the mission and ministry of our church. Each of us equally participates in our activities and events and our service to others. If you can't hold a rake this afternoon, you can come next Saturday when we have a work day right here on our own grounds for our own church and our community. Reaching out in love does have so many expressions. It may be inviting a newcomer to come join in worship with you, or an activity of our church. Or maybe it's making a priority to greet a newcomer in worship before talking with our own friends. The list of possibilities is endless. To live in Jesus is to love. And to love is to live in Jesus. How will people know that we are disciples? By our love for one another. So be it. Amen.